I want to start off by sharing my condolences to the family of 8-year-old DeJour Wilson, who was senselessly shot and killed last night. Getting notified about another child being a victim of gun violence is one of the most painful experiences, not only as a law enforcement professional, but also as a parent. We are once again asking for the community's help and partnership to bring this killer to justice. It is because of the community's willingness to step forward that we've been able to identify, arrest, and charge violent gun offenders over the past several months. Clearance rates for homicides so far this year are at 41%, but we need to get the clearance rates for homicide over 70%, and we cannot do that without the community's help. So please come forward with any information you have to help us solve this homicide of DeJour and any others that you have information about. As frustrating and painful as these incidents can be, our resolve as a police department and as a city must remain strong. Our entire department, all of our officers, have worked tirelessly to remove guns and violent offenders from our neighborhoods. Chicago Police Department, its officers have taken 7,303 guns off the streets of Chicago so far this year. Over the Labor Day weekend, our officers have recovered 201 guns just over Labor Day. I'm gonna say that again. Just over the Labor Day weekend, our officers recovered over 200 guns, making 146 gun arrests. And yet, illegal gun possession cycles in and out of our courts. Catch and release, they call it. It's a damn shame. These results have not been without its share of risk and harm to our officers. So far this year, a total of 60 officers have been shot or shot at. 10 shot of the 60. This includes an officer who was discharged from the hospital just last week after being shot on August 30th and is now recovering at home. An additional 563 officers have been physically assaulted in 2020. I'm gonna say that again. An additional 563 officers have been physically assaulted in 2020, including an officer who was stabbed in her ballistic vest during this past weekend's officer-involved shooting. 880 officers have tested positive for COVID-19 so far this year. 880 have tested positive for COVID. 3 officers have died from COVID this year. Chicago should not question the dedication, commitment, bravery, and courage of its police officers. From 6 p.m. Friday through 11:59 Monday, there were 38 shooting incidents, 51 shooting victims, and 10 murders. Of those 51 shooting victims, 6 were juveniles, and tragically, this 8-year-old was fatally shot, DeJour. Now I would like to turn it over to Chief of Detective Brendan Deanahan to provide updates on several ongoing investigations. Brendan.
Thanks, Superintendent. Just to echo what the superintendent had already stated, it's terrible to stand up here and talk about another child being killed, an 8-year-old this time. And once again, we're asking for the community's help to solve this case. So I think some of the news outlets already put out some information. The detectives released a seeking to identify bulletin regarding this black Dodge Charger that is the offending vehicle. So please, we're asking everybody from the community to look at this car and to talk to people in the community. We believe in the detective division that people know who committed this offense, and now we need that information, and we need people to come forward to help solve this crime. So please take a look at that vehicle and please communicate with Area 1 Detective Division to give us information to help assist. I also know that there's been some questions on the individual that was killed at the Walgreens, and there's a suspect in custody for that. And we are working very closely with the state's attorney's office, and we do expect charges sometime later today, but we have more work to do with the state's attorney's office in order to secure those charges. So I'm sure you guys have a couple questions, but first I'd like to turn it over to Pastor Tory Barrett. He's going to talk a little bit about his church. Tory?
Thank you, Chief. Thank you, Superintendent. Appreciate you. Good morning, everyone. My name is Tory Barrett, and this senseless killing has to stop. I know it firsthand. When I was about 13 years ago, I lost a sister. Her name was Cleo, K-L-E-O, to this senseless violence that's happening. She was 27 years old, minister in my father's church, a deputy sheriff at Cook County Correctional Facility, engaged to be married, and her life was taken. And so I decided that I was going to do my piece to bring peace in this city. And so I started and opened the Cleo Center, which is an acronym now that stands for Keep Loving Each Other. And I founded the organization because of the tragedy that took place. And for us, what we've been able to do in the area that we serve is instill into these young people that they have choices. Economics, they need to have funds. And so we create a summer jobs program that we employ over 300 youth every year. Majority of the youth are referred to us by the Juvenile Detention Center. And so we're able to work with these young people to keep them safe during the summer. We also turned them into entrepreneurs. A young man, Anthony Collins, who grew up in the Cleo Center from a little boy. And now Anthony has his own company where he wires security cameras throughout the city of Chicago because he decided that he had a choice working through the Cleo Center. This homeless youth population. I was tired of seeing homeless youth and other folks who say that they can't afford to have quality housing in their neighborhood. And so we created and developed a $23.5 million housing complex called the Cleo Art Residences, where we had only 58 units, but we had 1,000 applications. And it's because these young people trust us because of the work that we've done to invest in them. In addition to creating the housing development, there's a retail space. And so once again, we say, how do we take young people from this community, turn them into entrepreneurs, and allow them the opportunity to serve? So we have a young man, name of his company is Chasing 23. He hires ex-offenders and teach them how to sell T-shirts that they print, and now they're entrepreneurs. We have the Sports Shed, an organization that takes sporting good donations from major corporations and resell them to the schools and the community, people who can't afford to go to larger sporting good places. And then lastly, we have the Park Supper Club, that it's coming. And this Park Supper Club, we've been working with Commander Wallace from the 2nd District, Sergeant Walton, and our Alderman Taylor to bring a dining experience that people don't have to go to. Nothing wrong with the Gold Coast. I visited often myself, but we should be able to have that in our own neighborhood. And so we're working with them to get the support to do that. And then lastly, we've also applied for state funding. We applied for the cannabis license, didn't get it because we felt like we should be a part of that. But there's another funding, R3, $4.1 million dedicated to Washington Park area. Instead of competing with all the other nonprofits, we decided to partner and go after it together because these are organizations that we know are invested in our community, and we should not have an outside organization to come in and do it. And all of these things that we're doing in Washington Park is to help the police bring peace. That's what we're doing. And so, Superintendent, we stand in support of you. As I close, we also have to work with the mayor. Now, whether you voted for her or not, whether you like her or not, the fact is that overwhelmingly the city of Chicago voted her in. And she is now our leader. And this is a world-class city. We're world-class citizens. And we all have to pledge our full support Because the only way to continue to make sure that Chicago continues to be a world-class city is if all of the citizens have one goal. And that goal is to do whatever it takes to make Chicago great. And so, Honorable Mayor Lightfoot, we support you. Mr. Superintendent, you have our full support. And I'll leave the citizens of Chicago with the question, as I encourage you to get involved. And that question is, what is your piece? What is your PIECE of the PEACE going to be? Peace.
Thank you, Pastor Barrett. Now we'll take questions. Let me have the Chief of Detectives answer that question, if you don't mind.
So your question was, is there a motive at this time? So there's we don't have a definitive motive, but there's a ongoing gang conflict in the area, and it's possible that other people that were in this vehicle were the targets. Obviously, the 8-year-old was not, but it doesn't appear that it was a random act. It appears that the people from this vehicle were definitely targeting someone in that car or someone they thought should have been in that car. So it's an ongoing gang-on-gang or group-on-group violence. I don't have a definitive, like you said, but for an extended period of time in that specific area. Sure, the detectives know. I'm not gonna. I mean, those are witnesses, and obviously they're suffering an extreme tragedy right now. But the detectives are working with the other people in the car to help try to move this case forward. But right now, they're obviously in a grieving mode at this point. But detectives still need to speak with them further to help push this case along. But yes, we do know who's in the vehicle. Yes. I'm not going to go that far.
Right. So I think it's a really good point that Chief Dinahan just brought out, that these young people, these children are not the targets, that people who they're with, the adults, are the targets. And more often than not, we're talking about targeted as it relates to gang conflicts. So one of the things that we started about a month into my tenure here as superintendent is looking at the criminal networks and taking those cases federally, where there are more significant consequences in the court system, that there's really strong cases we've made to this point. We'll be bringing those forward across the finish line to get sentencing, but those cases have to be made through an investigation. There's not an instant in court. And of course, as you know, COVID has delayed many of the grand jury convening, and some of the prosecution of some of these cases have been delayed March, April, May, but full force now since June. We've been really working well with the federal court system. Grand juries have been convening, and we've been pushing the ball forward as it relates to bringing criminal network gang violence forward in the criminal justice system. Well, not necessarily just children being shot. I think the answer to your initial question was, how do you reduce the violence? What are we doing to reduce? The consequences of committing a violent crime is one component to reducing violence. Not only for those perpetrators, but it just sends a message to others who might commit violence that this will be you as well, that this 15-year sentence, this 20-year sentence in the federal system is a preventative measure as well as it is a consequential one for those who are convicted and brought to justice. So it's both preventative and it's a real consequence, much more than you can get otherwise. One of the things I really like to do when I get a question, this is a pretty predictable question. So if you think about what the plans are or have been and what the results of the plan and what they have been, after the George Floyd videotape was revealed of his murder, all across the country, not just in Chicago, violent crime spiked. And it spiked throughout May, June, and July. We reorganized our department during this spiking of violent crime to create 2 citywide teams, the community safety team and the critical incident response team, as you recall. That's been in place. This is the 7th week that's been in place. To address specifically your question, what are we doing? Is the plan working? Should we change the plan? Since then, murders have declined over 50% since the plan has been in place. And shootings has declined over 18% since the plan had been in place. And so even though you compare this weekend to whatever you want to describe as a high violent crime, it's lower than previous weekends. And it's lower than last year's Labor Day weekend as well. And so we're going to continue, obviously, looking at addressing violent crime, but we're seeing, as I've said for the last several weeks, tenuous progress. It's fragile, obviously, but we're seeing tenuous progress. A 50% decline in murders over the last 7 weeks, I think meets the criteria for continuous progress. But I want to couch this, and I think this is important. One murder is one too many. One shooting is one too many. But we're seeing tenuous progress with our plan over the last 7 weeks. And I just want to recount, I've been here 16 weeks. So we had to organize this department based on things that changed on the ground as it relates to not only a global pandemic and global recession, but also the George Floyd tape murder being shown, causing nationwide violent crime to spike. And so we reorged after a reorganization had put in place in April from the previous superintendent. And so 7 weeks of the reorganization that I put in place under my tenure has resulted in a 50% reduction in murders and an 18% reduction in shootings. I just wanted to be clear on your question about, is the plan working? Tenuous progress is my answer. Yes. We're extending the summer mobile for another 90 days because of the very results I mentioned. We're not going to stop doing something that's given us tenuous progress results. So we're going to extend it for another 90 days, and we're looking to find ways to grow the citywide team, the community safety team, as you mentioned, whether that's absorbing summer mobile or just doing it's a very technical labor term of just, asking for more volunteers to join the team or drafting more volunteers to join the team.
And those 2 citywide.
Yes, it is. It's a separate reorganization that I put in place.
So all 3 are.
Yes, definitely. And showing tenuous progress. 50% reduction in murders, 18% reduction in shootings since they've been implemented.
Can you clarify?
Yeah, very, very small, but yeah, decline. Yeah, follow up with us. Consequences for illegal gun possession. It's our mission. These are people who possess guns illegally for the most part, and it's a catch and release court system. A damn shame, as I mentioned. Thank you.